Well, first of all, I think we're at a place in history with policing where some decisions are going to be made that are going to determine how policing will eventuate into the future. And I think we've got a big choice. And one side of this chasm says we're going to be paramilitary, we're going to be command and control, we're going to be people who are going to be directive the way we've been directive since World War II. On the other side, there's a group, and it's a much smaller group, that is going to say we're going to be problem solvers, we're going to be community focused, and we're going to be the kind of people who will solve more than just police problems. And I think we've really divided in North America, and I think around the world, into these two camps. You asked me where we're going, and I honestly don't know. It makes sense to me to go in one direction, but I actually think an easier choice for people is to take the direction that we see in the movies, and that's the kind of RoboCop approach to policing. And I'm sad to say that concerns me a lot. Well, because the choice is a choice that says our community isn't as important as our subculture, which is the policing subculture. We are a tribe in policing, and I think that the people who are holding the keys to that, to what doors we go through, what experiences we have, are people who may not necessarily be thinking about what's best for the community. They may be thinking what's best for us as a profession, us as an organization. And my view is what's best for us as an organization, what's best for policing as a profession, is that we meet the needs of the communities that we're supposed to serve. When we stop doing that, I think we lose our relevance. I think they're on point, and I think the reason that we're seeing that is because there's a general, and it's a widespread, dissatisfaction, not with the police themselves, because I think the police are popular. What I think is not popular is the way that the money is spent and how much of it is being spent. When you consider the Toronto Police Service spent $1 billion last year. Cities can't afford this. United States police services are laying off officers across the country. We have got to do what the community wants us to do, or they're simply not going to fund it anymore. To have a whole bunch of people doing jobs that they don't need to be doing or that they're not trained for. What would police be doing in an HR role? What would police be doing in administrative roles? Why are police sitting behind front desks? We've got to realize that the community will tolerate only so much excess from us. And then they're going to say, no, we want that sourced out. And I know, and you know, that we're always going to choose a cheaper option when it comes to our public service bills. And people simply will not tolerate what I'm calling fat cat police services. They're going to cut it down. I just don't want it to be officers that they cut. So let's make our own corrections. Let's put the officers back out on the street where the people want them, and let's make police training officers start thinking in terms of how can I problem solve for the community so that the community will respect what I can give it as a sworn officer. Absolutely. Why we're getting what's called a blowback in anything, and it happens in every single kind of movement you try to make in any field. I mean, I refer your audience to John Cotter's work. You're always going to have a pushback. And in my view, we have now got to that pushback stage with PBL. And I think we have to be prepared for it as advocates of adult learning, of teaching people in a way that's not mimetic, in experiential discovery for our new employees. So what I'm suggesting is 2.0 has to work at a leadership level and not just at the training level. What's happened with us so far is we've tried to do this as a generational change with both PBL and PTO. So with the PBL, we entered at the training officer and at the training academy stage because we were trying to grow it through the organization. Well, we're now getting pushback. And what we need to have is we need to have a whole leadership component with PBL that says, we need to problem solve as an agency, or we're going to become irrelevant and they're going to privatize. So I see us, we did the right thing with PBL by entering in through training, but now the next step is that we have to go in through our senior ranks and start dealing with those people from, say, in Canada, an inspector level up, and in the United States, lieutenant level up. My own university, Notre Dame, at the law school where I teach, we're struggling. We're really struggling to be relevant in terms of our teaching. My class, I've been running it as a PBL class for the last 4 years, but you think police are hard to change? Try and change lawyers' attitudes. It's because we have that we know best attitude, and we don't listen to what the community is telling us. For the lawyers not to listen to the new learners, we will become irrelevant. And the students these days, the millennial generation, they vote with their feet. And what I'm seeing happening with communities, and you're starting to see it in the United States, and you're definitely seeing it in the UK, is they're going to vote with their money, you know, their feet being the money. They're going to walk away from the public delivery of service if it's not an effective one. So my answer to that is we're going to have to start looking at doing it better than we're doing it right now, and we're just not doing it well enough. E-learning is so limited in terms of what we conceptualize it as. Let me put it in another way for you. We are, at our age, or my age especially, we're digital immigrants. What we're now training are digital natives. So these are people who think, it's almost built into their DNA, that they use technology in a way that we have to discover. It's already been discovered by them from when they were infants. They started using this stuff early. So we have no choice but to move in that direction. And you change or you die. It's no different for police agencies, or as I was saying, for my university. We have to change the way we're doing it. Now, there's still a place for an instructor to be in front of a group of people, to offer counsel, to facilitate, to do all the things that we are used to doing. But we have to realize that that way cannot exist on its own. It has to be married with the digital technologies that are available to us today. I work with students who are overseas. I live in Australia, and I work with people in Canada, in the United States, Europe, Asia, and I work with them not on a daily basis, but definitely on a weekly basis. And that's just the reality of the world today. If we don't get on top of that, and we don't start getting the best lessons from the UK and from Sweden and from all the different policing jurisdictions, then I think we get left behind. And there's some great movements in policing that if we just remain focused in our own jurisdictions, we'll be sorry. And we will again lose our relevance with our own communities. It has been around in a codified form, if you will. You're probably thinking of McMaster. But our view is that the newer form of education is this industrial, sitting in a desk sort of thing. And PBL has been around since we were hiding in caves to stay away from the animals and to keep warm. So PBL is the natural state of learning for us. This other industrial learning is not natural. But to answer your question is, what's the biggest change in it in the last 30 years of it being codified, is I think our addition, and I think we in policing can brag about it a little bit, our addition of emotional intelligence into the learning style. It is a renaissance age for us. And I think, how great is it that police officers, who are often seen wrongly as being sort of moribund and intransigent, not wanting to change, those police officers are actually being seen as vanguards, as leading the way. And I've been delighted by my response, and Greg, you know, working together with police agencies, how open they've been to the emotional intelligence. Once you put it in terms that they're going to understand it. And I don't think you can go in there and sell it as kumbaya and everybody do group hugs. That's a misnomer. Nobody's offering that. We're talking about emotional survival. And the police officers are into it, as they should be. And that, for me, has been the most exciting change with PBL. Well, I think it's where police officers do their business. They do it in both the affective zones and in the cognitive zone. So they got to solve crimes using the cognitive part of their brains. But they also have to deal every day in an overwhelming way with emotions, their emotions, the community's emotions, the emotions of the people that they deal with in terms of having to arrest them. And then the one that we often forget about in the police training and in the police world is the emotions that we carry home with us to our families. We have got to recognize that many of our police officers, if untrained and untreated, are going to suffer detrimental effects from things like PTSD and the constant stress. We already see the detriment to our profession. We see it with alcoholism, we see it with abuse, we see it with self-abuse, we see it with suicides, we see it with addictions. So what are we doing about that, and how much training? I went through police college 30 years ago, and I got absolutely none of that, and I don't see a whole lot more happening today unless it's people like your organization and other organizations that have said, hey, we better have a look at this EI problem.
Alrighty.
There have, and rather than get into EI testing, which is a bit of a minefield, because I think we could perhaps use it the same way we use tests for people to, whether they're suited for a profession or whatever. But really, what I would rather do is I would rather spend the money that we would use testing and teach people how to recognize things like self-awareness, self-management, relationship management, social awareness, those kinds of things. Because one thing we do know is that everyone can learn it and everyone can benefit from it. Unless, of course, you're a sociopath and you hope that your other testing would catch those folks. But what I'm saying is, don't spend the money on testing. Spend the money, do your regular testing, spend the money on training everybody from your chief down to your lowest recruit, down to the recruit who just joined. Train everybody in your organization on how to recognize it in themselves and how to recognize it in others, how to manage it in themselves and how to manage it in others, and you'll have spent your dollars well. So what we have to do is change our emotional culture so that it's all right to question, it's all right to say, hey, maybe we could try it this way, or here's what I think. And then people aren't chastised because of the way that they're addressing those concerns. So let's change the culture of policing from within policing, as opposed to bringing people from outside to say, here's how you can get better. And I'm all for letting the police identify their problems and then work through a problem-based learning methodology in each agency to fix what is particularly wrong with each agency. Sure, I think, again, of course, our emphasis is so much more on emotional intelligence. We do so much more of that than we've ever done, because we realize that's where the rubber meets the road in policing and nursing and law and everything else. The other thing that I think people need to do is to spend more time training the people who are instructing their newest recruits. They are your gatekeepers to your profession. Why are we not spending all kinds of time and all kinds of money giving those people the best training that we can get them? Not only the training to deal with the recruits, but the training to deal with the pushback and the blockers that are out there in the field who just don't know what it is they don't know. So that's not the way I did it. Why are we doing it differently? Maybe we need some education programs. So PBL is now at that stage where it's being challenged, because I think it's making some inroads, and people who don't understand that are pushing a little bit. Maybe what I would suggest for agencies is to just go back to the basics. PBL is about treating police officers with respect, with treating them by treating them in a way that allows them to use their own creativity, their own native intelligence, their own problem-solving skills. It enhances the individual. It doesn't take away from an agency. In fact, what it does by enhancing the individual is it adds to an agency. Well, read about implementation. Understand that it is a dynamic process that follows patterns. And we expect, because we know it's the right thing to do, that others will just simply come on board and do it because it's the right thing to do. Remember the phrase that they're thinking ideologically, not logically. So you have to prepare for pushback. And what I suggest is just get your team that's doing the implementing to prepare everyone for what's coming. Keep people informed. Use the John Cotter approach. He talks about change. Just use an approach that makes sense. Cotter's, he's earned his chops, so use his stuff. I used it at 3 different schools where I was the administrator, either a principal or a deputy principal. And in each instance, I followed that. And in each instance, it worked for me. It's worked in this program where we've just gone, we've targeted one group, and we've counted our successes. We've learned from our failures. So it is a process, not an event. And I strongly encourage your implementers to recognize that. And then the other part that they have to have is personal resiliency. we've been called every name in the book over the years for trying to, we wrecked policing, we did this, we did that. And I think you have to be prepared for a certain amount of animosity, and you can't take it personally. And you have to have enough courage to keep going in the face of an onslaught of criticism that isn't justified, it's not valid, and it's not logical. And if you're not prepared to keep going in light of that and say it's the right thing to do, then maybe that's not the fight you want to be in. I do want to say in conclusion, thank you so much for showing up at the PSPBL conference. As you can see, I fully support it. I'm sorry I can't be there. I had a trial that I had to attend in Perth, so I'm quite sorry I'm not there. I encourage you to try to remember that it's the community that we have to serve that is the most important reason for us all getting together. We make better officers by doing better training. We make better decisions by doing more emotional intelligence training with our police, by doing leadership that involves problem solving. If you can go back to your agencies and quality add in any way you can, you make policing better for the rookie who joins 10 years from now. Long after I'm gone, long after Greg's gone, long after your board is gone, these changes will be felt in policing. So you have to think long term with this. And I want to encourage you all to learn from each other, share as much as you can, take away what you can, and go back and find some way to make your agency a little better for the citizens who live there. Thanks everybody, and I hope you have a great conference.